Well, good afternoon, good morning, everybody out there, and welcome to another edition of Takeo Tuesday. Today's class is on our residential side of things, and we're going to do a deep dive into our new controls. Myself, I'm Dave Holdorf. I'm joined by John Barber and Jason Cox, as you guys can see here on the screen, as the residential training trio that we have for Takeo and Takeo Tuesdays today. So like I said, we're going to do a deep dive into our new controls. So we have some new switching relays and some new zone valve controls, and we're going to go in deep with these things. So it is a little bit more, a little different than our normal classes where we always do an application and we're doing some formulas and some calculations, but we're not going to do any of that today. We're going to go into really how to utilize these new controls that we have, what's the same, but also what is different as well. If this is your first time on a GoToWebinar and you can't hear us right now, then don't follow these next instructions. But I want you to see that orange arrow. If it's pointing to the left, you can get to the audio sections and you can go ahead and adjust your settings that way. Everybody is muted and your cameras are turned off. So if you're muted and you have some questions for us, you'll see further down the line there a question section. And in that question section is how you're going to communicate with us. So if you have any questions, ask them immediately. Jason and John are going to be monitoring the questions page and will interrupt me periodically if you do have some questions. We don't do a question answer period and save it to the end. We want you to ask those questions immediately. So just to make sure everything is working, if those of you that have been here before, you know what to do, give us a quick hi, hello, how are you? Let us know where you're coming from and where you're viewing Takeo Tuesday from today. It'd be greatly appreciated so that we know that everything is working. Because there have been times, as you know, the internet goes down and I'm talking to myself and I won't know it. So right now, all I'm doing is staring at a light on my computer screen, and I don't know if I'm actually talking to you guys. So I'm assuming some people can hear us, John.
Oh yeah, we're getting chiming in from all over the place. We got Michael from York, Pennsylvania. We've got let's see, we got Jake from Winkler, Manitoba. We got Fairbanks, Alaska. Paul Bruins chiming in. South Jersey, Paul Leonard, how we doing? We've got Greenwood, South Carolina with William Reynolds and all kinds of folks. So Madison, Wisconsin, Sacramento, California. We've got North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Philly. I mean, every place. So this is great. Excellent. Jimmy Fry's in the house too. So I think we should all stand up and give him some applause. or not.
Jimmy, good to see you. All right, I'm not going to stand right now. So, but anyways, thanks everybody for logging in. Greatly appreciate it. Shall we get started and talking about the next generation of our controls, as we call them, the -5 controls? All right, and so the -5 is just our next generation of controls that we have with them. So you'll see all the part numbers will end in -5. But the one thing I want everybody to remember that is the same thing as the older controls that you've come to know and love over the last 13 years that we've had them. It's just we've made a lot of improvements. We've had this running list of changes that that we've talked to a lot of contractors out there, a lot of customers says, hey, it'd be great if it did this. All right, and so we had that running list, and so we made a lot of changes to them. So one of the biggest changes you'll see is by looking at it right now. So when we look at some of these controls, but I want to go over the part numbers first so we're all clear on what we've continued and what we've discontinued. So the next generation of our switching relays, here is our part numbers for them. Now, you may remember the older ones, so the -4 generation, we had an SR 502-4, for example, but we also had a 502-4-EXP, okay? And so what we now have when it comes to the -5 is that the standard boards have been discontinued. So those we do not have a standard board. Everything now has the EXP functionality. And if you're not sure what the differences are and what the EXP did, I'm going to go over that in a minute. All right. So these are our new part numbers. Now, the reason why I have put an asterisk next to the 501-5 is that it doesn't, there has been almost no change to the 501. There's been slight changes to it. meaning manufacturing process, but functionality from the old version to the new version is almost identical. Just some small tweaks that we've done to it. So everything today from this point forward, we'll be talking about the 502 and on the changes that we have to them. When we look at the ZVCs, same thing happened there as well. We have the 403-5s all the way up to the 406. The standard boards have been discontinued. Everything has the EXP functionality built in. Okay. So, but what was EXP and what do we have built into that? So let's take a look at the dash fours as a quick review in what we had in there. And everything that we're going to talk about now from the dash fours is now included into the dash fives. So we had a terminal on here. You'll see where it says expansion, where we were able to tie one board into another. So if you had more than one controller on one job site, whether they were SRs or ZVCs, you can daisy chain wires connected to the ABC terminal that you see right here, the expansion, and it was 3 wires going from one board to the next. Okay, so that was a function. I mean, you could do up to 120 zones in one house. If you have more than 120 zones in one house, you might be over zoning, and we need to have a conversation. Okay, so we never tested past 120 zones in a project before. We had an option where we could add an external controller that we called, say, the PC700, PC702, the PC705. It would plug in right into that terminal there that says power controls. We had our end switches here. You'll see the end switch for the main and priority that would tie into your boiler. So we had 2 separate end switches. We built fuses. So from the Dash 2 models, if you remember the old Dash 2s, we had the ice cube relays in there. When we went to the Dash 4, we went to a solid state and we fuse protected rather than having to replace a whole relay. Now, if you had an issue, you could replace it with a fuse. And we still supported our tankless coil. So you can see down here on the bottom left, we got the ZCGR, the zone call, the zone request that we would see on our tankless coil boilers, a lot of the oil boilers out there. We would support them still on our Dash 4 models. And the EXP model also had, like, for example, you're seeing here a 4-zone system, which means I've got 4 zone circulators. All right. But we also had a primary pump, and that was your boiler pump. So we had that extra terminal on there rather than having to go to a separate SR501 to make sure that boiler pump turned on properly. So depending on your primary, secondary piping that you had on the system itself. So those were some of the features that we had built into the EXPs. Few other things that we also had built in is that the EXPs all had the C terminal, all right, which means that C terminal for your thermostats that were power stealing, that needed a lot extra juice coming out. If they did not have batteries on it, you can get that common terminal, especially, say, thermostats like your Nest or Ecobee or Honeywell style thermostats. From the Dash 2 to the Dash 4s, we brought the LEDs to the front. Everybody liked that, especially when you mounted the controller on the right-hand side of the boiler on the Dash 2s and you couldn't see any LEDs. So at least we brought them to the front side. And then these dip switches allowed us some functionality that we could customize to every job site. So, for example, we had priority protection timer. You could turn that off, which means built into the boards, we had that 1-hour lockout. You could turn it off and say you can continue it priority running longer than 1 hour. We have post purge, all right, which meant we would take the last zone call for heat, we would keep that zone on, or we could dump it into the priority zone, your DHW indirect tank. We had pump exercise built in, so whenever the control didn't run, nothing turned on for a long time, so we had a choice between 30 seconds every 2 weeks or 2 minutes every 24 hours. We could have that make sure the pumps run so they don't seize up on you. So that was built into all of the EXPs as well. And the other thing that we did is we made, especially here on the SR panel, nice big wiring terminals for your circulators. All right, so that was in the Dash 4. So all of that we included into the Dash 5s. So as we take a look at what we've created and what we've put into the Dash 5s, I want to first start off with a couple of enhancements. And again, this is from you out there. This is what everybody's been looking for. So the exterior, and this is universal between the switching relays and the zone valve controls, we've easily removed the cover. All right, there's only 2 screws now on it, and the left-hand side has a hinge. All right, it's not a permanent hinge, it's a couple of tabs. And what I love most about this new cover is that as soon as you connect those 2 tabs, it always lands onto the 2 screws when you go to close it. So you go from left to right. So for anybody that's ever put a cover on a switching relay or a zone valve control, did you get all 4 screws the first time? No. You only get 2 on the top or the bottom. Depends on where the control is positioned. You always messed it up somewhere, right? So now it always lands onto those 2 screws. And it's not a permanent hinge. We wanted to make sure that. I remember the first prototype came out and it was a permanent hinge. And they showed it to me and they said, "Hey, Dave, what do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great for everybody else but me. I'm left-handed." Right? So I got this control covers in my way trying to get my hands in there. So we made it come off completely out there. We gave you, it might seem simple, but the only zone that looks good with Sharpie is zone 1, right? When you write it on the outside of the cover. As soon as you start writing zone 2, zone 3, it just never looks good. Yeah, you can get a label maker, and still we gave you space to label that lines up to the lights, okay? We also now gave you your output lights. Yes, we gave you you have a power light, you've got your zone lights when there's a call, but now we gave you boiler output lights. So if the boiler or the DHW priority has been called, as well as a couple on this board here, you'll see a couple auxiliary 1 and 2. We gave you a couple lights there as well. And we have made the clearance with the cover for all angle BX connectors. All right, there were some BX connectors, some manufacturers out there that are very, very tight tolerance. The cover never fit on there. So what you had to do was get an extra nut and put it on both sides to get that spacing, or you took out the grinder and you're grinding away the cover. So now we have, yes, all clearance for BX connectors out there. So this is the exterior universal to both controls. All right. So what's under the hood? What have we done differently under the cover for the switching relays here? All right, quite a few enhancements. So like I said, everything that the EXPs had, but a few more things. Whoops. All right, we have added back knockouts as well. So you'll see here that the circuit board is much smaller. The exterior dimensions is almost the same. It's slightly larger. I mean, slightly as in like a 1/4 inch all around than the older boards, but the circuit board got smaller. So by designing this circuit board smaller, we gave you more room for wiring, but we also added back knockouts because there's some of you guys out there that don't like to see the thermostat wires coming into the controller or even your power wires going out to your circulators. So those back knockouts are there. We still have the same end switches. You got your main end switch and you have your priority end switch, but they're programmable. All right, we have access to it, and I'll show you where we come into play with that. We have also made replaceable transformers with the option of adding one based upon the power draw that you have on the system itself. So you'll see here that you have this tab knockout. So you have the transformer that will hook right in there, and 1 screw at the bottom here. You also, and it has a Molex plug that you can plug in the transformer. If you needed to add a transformer to this, you could drop another one in here. Now the switching relays come with a 20 VA transformer, which means if I have this board here, which is a 6-zone panel, and you had, say, more than 2 Wi-Fi style thermostats on there, you're not going to have enough juice. All right, so you're going to need to add more transformer, more power to it. So you could add in a 40 VA transformer into this section and plug it in, and you get to do more of your Wi-Fi style thermostats here to the system. All right, and it's a simple add-on. And over here, you'll see the auxiliary pump 1 and auxiliary pump 2. Those are programmable, meaning I have access to them. I get to do some customization to those things. All right, and I'll show you where we can do that a little bit. All right, what else have we done? There's still some more things I want to show you. All right, we still have that same expansion port. all right, which means you can daisy chain the boards from one to the other. All right. Now, if you look at the board, you'll also see the words Modbus on there. That does not mean we have Modbus points in communication, but we do have some communication with OEM equipment. All right, meaning some manufacturers that can provide their points, and we can kind of create some custom code to work back and forth with each other at the moment. So right now we don't have anything out there, but it's for future proofing this device. So this way we don't have to have a new control. It's going to be something that we can add in there. What we have added is a domestic hot water recirc sensor. All right, so there's a terminal here. You'll see XX as sensor, and that is the technology that we have in our smart plug. All right, so those of you that have done some domestic hot water recirculation, we have our separate smart plug that has a temperature sensor, and you can plug your circulator right into it. If you have this relay on there, there's no reason to go find an outlet to go plug that pump in. Auxiliary pump 1 is your recirc pump. So you would just wire in your pump here, and we have the same functionality as the Smart Plug does. So that's built into the board itself. If you're not using it, then you don't need to wire anything to it. It's just a standard 10K sensor. Doesn't come with the board. You'll have to get your hands on that. We are still supporting the tankless coil boilers that are out there. So there's still plenty of them out there. So we still have the ZC connection in here. And of course, we brought the LED lights like I talked about before. And here's that same wire management with a few more ground screws, all right, which has been very, very popular with everybody. Instead of having them on the edge, now they're on the back. All right, how we doing out there, JB? Any questions?
It's a couple. One, Steve Martino says, look at that room with 3 exclamation points. You like that one. And this one we're going to hang on to for later, but I just wanted to acknowledge Eugene's question about the app. He says it can be a little bit cumbersome, but we're going to hold on to that for a little bit later on, Eugene, because we're going to talk about the app in a few minutes.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. All right, like I said, everybody, there is no question answer period. You got a question, you ask it immediately. All right, let's take a look at the zone valve control. This one's a little bit different. All right, obviously. So as we take a look at the ZVC board, all right, we're going to see the same things as the EXPs, and you may see the same things as the SRs, like we have those back knockouts. All right, again, we have the same programmable boiler end switches. Here, we have 40 VA transformers. So the 3 and 4 zone models are going to have 140 VA. The 5 and 6 are going to have 240 VA. So that should be more than enough juice for some of your systems out there. If you need more power than that, then contact my guys at Tech Services. They do have some wiring diagrams on how you can use an external transformer for your thermostats. Let's say you had a 6-zone system like this and you were using our 571 zone valves, which take a lot of power. You're going to get basic thermostats on there with the 240s, and you're not going to be looking at 6 Wi-Fi style thermostats. So we can help you out with that too.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Real quick question from Steve. Can we use any 40 VA transformer in a pinch as a replacement?
I would say yes and no, because the transformers that we have here have the plug already on there. So you'll have to cut the plug off of it and have to do some of your own custom wiring. Make sure you follow color suits. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. So that's why I mean it's a yes or no answer there.
Yeah, as long as they have the Molex plug and the right wires are in the right holes, then yes.
Exactly. Yep. Otherwise, you let the smoke out, and that's factory installed. We have not been able to figure a way to get it back in. Yep. So yeah. One of the big differences in the ZVC board compared to the Dash 4 is when we had the older Dash 4s, you would have the black and white wires from the transformer loose in the box. You'd bring your line voltage in and just wire nut them there. Instead, now we gave you a terminal for your line voltage. As you can see, all 4 wires from the transformer are now tied directly into the board, and we're bringing our line voltage into a terminal here. And then we have given you 3 pump outputs. Okay, so, and here's the big difference. In the ZVC-4s, the pump outputs were dry contacts. They were non-powered terminals. You had to bring power in. The Dash 5 model, these are now powered, all right, because 99.95% of the time you were using it to run a pump that was line voltage. So we figured, hey, might as well put power to them now. So, and now we have the options for 3 circulators on here. One of them would be your zone pump for your heating system. That's before your zone valves. One of them will be your boiler pump as a default, and the other one's going to be defaulted as your domestic hot water recirc. So yes, we do have that recirc section available on here as well. So as we go to the other side of the board, we go ahead and take again, yes, we got the expansion terminal like before. We have DHW Smart Plus built into here. Now this is on the dip switches. We now have a time delay for zone valves that don't have an end switch. We're starting to see more and more actuators out there that are 2-wire, all right? And our sequence of operation in the boards themselves is thermostat calls for heat, sends power to 1 and 2 to power up the zone valve. All right, once the zone valve gets to 50% open, the end switch closes. Once the end switch in the valve closes, then we send a signal to the boiler end switch and the pump end switch. And if you have an actuator that does, a zone valve or an actuator that does not have an end switch in there, that means the pump is turning on right away and the boiler is turning on right away, and we have 0 flow. All right, so now we have a time delay 2-wire. So you flick that dip switch over, and you don't have to put a jumper across 3 and 4. It has a time built in of 1 minute that it waits before it closes those other switches in there. Again, we have the diagnostic outputs on here, and the same management for your wire. So here, when we're looking at our zone valves and pumps, still plenty of room to do your wiring in here. So that is what we've done under the hood for the improvements on the controls. All right. All right, so here's the dip switches on the Dash 5 boards. So here's our switching relay. You'll see the top switch here is your master expansion switch. All right, well, that's the same as before. All right, your master switch is the one that's in your boiler room. That's going to control the boiler. That's going to have your domestic hot water priority and also your boiler pump if need be. Your expansion controllers would be just zone panels. And you just, again, you're daisy chaining those wires back and forth. Now, I just want to make sure everybody knows this. You know, when you look at the dip switches and you'll see the on-off labeling here, on-off doesn't necessarily mean off, right? It's just another function to it. Does that make sense? All right, I got a live audience here too at the same time, so I want to make sure they know that here, and everybody here online knows that as well. It's a separate function sometimes. So master means, you know, you've got the one, if you're not using that daisy chain, then you leave them all into the master switch. The next one, this is the same also as your Dash 4s. You have priority on or off. Now, this is a big change from our previous boards. In the Dash 4s, your priority zone, meaning your domestic zone, was the last one on the boards. The new ones, Dash 5s, we brought everything to zone 1. So zone 1 is now your priority. And what this means, if you're not sure what priority means, if this zone gets a call, zone 1 gets a call for heat, turn off all the other pumps until this one is satisfied. We typically denote that for our DHW priority or indirect tank, and therefore we're temporarily shutting off the heating zones to satisfy the tank. Because if there's a call for hot water, it's a call for hot water. Somebody wants it now, right? It's usually wet and naked in the shower. You don't want it to be cold water. So if there's any other rooms in the house or any other zones that need to be on priority, we need to know that as we program. You know, so if you're wet and naked somewhere else in your house, all right, that becomes a whole nother controller altogether. So anyways, the next one here is our primary pump. All right, now your primary pump is going to be your boiler pump here. And if it's a boiler that does not have its own internal circulator and you need to control it, it also does depend upon where you put your indirect tank pump. All right, so it could be tapped right off of that injection leg coming off the boiler before the pump. All right, that means it depends on how you want that primary pump to turn on, right? If you want it to turn on for any call, that means your priority zone is next to your other heating zones over here off of the boiler injection leg. If you turn it to off switch, all right, that means it's tied into the injection leg right after the boiler itself. So that's what we're looking for there. So it's an on or off, but it doesn't mean that it's off. It's just got a different function there. Now, the next dip switch here, we have our post purge. Now, post purge means last heating call turns off. It's going to keep that zone running. All right. No, I'm sorry. Now, what it's going to do is if you had priority on, it will make zone 1 run for 2 minutes and extract any BTUs out of your boiler and dump it into the indirect. The reason why we give this to you as an option is if you do not have a mixing valve after your indirect tank. All right, you want to have a mixing valve on your indirect tank feeding out to the house. I know across the country here, not everybody has a code for a mixing valve to be on your DHW side of things. So, and if you don't, you could get too high of a temperature in your tank. All right, so that's why we give it to you as an option. And your pump exercise 30 seconds every 2 weeks. Now, John alluded to it already. You'll see the asterisk here. That is because we have customization through the app on here. And I'll show you what we can do with that. All right, we jump over to the zone controls. And as we look at our zone valve controls, what we have, again, we have the master expansion, we have priority on off, and we have the primary pump on off as well. So I didn't want to talk about that in too much detail again. Now, post purge here is not going to your indirect tank. In a zone valve control, your post purge is your last heating zone. So whatever zone was last calling, it is going to keep that zone on under the zone valves, keep that zone valve open for an additional 2 minutes and put the BTUs from the boiler into the heating zone. If you've got a wall hung boiler with very minimal BTUs in there, residual, then you're probably going to leave this zone, this function off. But if it's your cast iron or you got a buffer tank or something like that, because we don't want to send any BTUs away from the system, so might as well put it into the house itself. You do have your pump exercise here, and then you'll see here also the time delay for the 2-wire zone valves that I was talking about. So that is our last dip switch that we have on the zone valve controls. All right, but there's still more. There's still more out there. Any questions on the dip switches, John?
Just well, one base one from Eugene was about why was DHW moved to number 1 or to zone number 1, and then also another question that we'll get to is when would you use the daughter board? We'll get to that one, but why was the zone DHW moved to number 1?
All right, so I wanted to go back a few slides just so you can see a picture of the circuit board itself. So here on the circuit board, all the models have the exact size circuit board that goes in there. It's a manufacturing process is what we did. So for example, this is showing a ZVC 406, meaning you can see 6 zones down here. If you were to order a ZVC 403, these terminals for 4 through 6 would be eliminated. Same as the thermostats up here and some other components that are on the circuit board would be eliminated altogether. So, but we didn't want to have, say, zone 6 being that priority zone and having terminals in the middle missing. So we moved it to the front. So it was more of a manufacturing thing for us as well. And it allowed us to control costs as well for you guys out there.
And it's also pretty much what everybody in the industry does. I mean, we have the largest market share in the industry, but we were the ones that had it on the last zone. Everybody else had it on the first, so it was just kind of I wouldn't call it industry standardization, but
yeah, kind of, yeah. Or we're going back, because our -2 models, the metal box covers had it on zone 1.
Right.
And then we moved it to the end, and then but every controller in the -2s had a different size circuit board. So and same as the -4s, Yep.
All right.
Excellent question. Thank you. All right, let me fast forward again. Again, this is nothing you missed. All right. We have another feature that we can add to the boards themselves, and it is an add-on. All right, and we have what we call the -R card or the PC800. So you can see it right here in the middle of the board. All right, where you can add in this daughter board. So this is a controller that gives us even more functionality to the system itself. And the reason why we didn't include it, we left it as a separate item, is because some of these features might be built into the boiler, maybe not, or you might find the features that are needed for an older system or even for a newer system that are out there, but these controls were already installed. Okay, so, but it could be added to any Dash 5 control except for the 501. The SR 501 you can't add it to, but anything else on the SRs and or ZVCs, you can add the PC 800 to. All right, so it comes with 4 posts and there's a terminal that you can easily lock it right down. It's not hard to do. Even I can do it. And I didn't short anything out on the board either. All right, so what's this board going to do? All right, so you'll see here it has a couple of terminals on here. It has a plus minus output. You'll see boiler sensor, and it has an outdoor sensor. All right, what we're doing with this is we have 2 options. We can do indoor reset or outdoor reset. And what's the difference between the 2 of them? All right, well, one, the indoor reset, all right, or as I like to call it, load compensation, is utilizing one temperature sensor, which comes with the card. All right, so you'll have one strap-on temperature sensor, and you wire it to the boiler sensor terminal and put it on the boiler supply side. And what that is now going to do, once you set this up properly, it looks at run times of zones and water temperature going out to the building. And what we're looking to do is get you a longer runtime by modulating the water temperature. So it's going to learn the run times of your zones and start lowering the water temperature, so we're not getting a short cycling on the boiler. It's going to add efficiency to your system and also make the house more comfortable. All right, by doing, and it's looking at the load. All right, it's looking at the load. What is the heat loss of the house? How much load are we putting on the boiler itself? And it does it automatically. It's going to learn those settings. Now, outdoor reset, which we've been doing for years, we have that in our PC 700, we had that in our PC 702 and 705, and a lot of boilers have that feature built in too. But what that does is it looks at an outside air temperature, and you program what water temperature you to operate on based upon your design conditions. But it doesn't take into account your zones. An outdoor reset, whether it's a single controller like this or built into the boiler, the best functionality is if you had one zone. All right, and the boiler was perfectly matched to the heat loss of the house. So if your heat loss came in at 57,421 BTUs per hour, what size boiler do you need? And anybody here in the room can answer that. What size boiler do you need if the heat loss came in at 57,421? 57,421. Exactly. We had one guy and the others were like, oh crap, I'm not sure how to answer this. They've been hanging out with me all day today, so they never know how to answer anything.
You have an advanced group there, Dave. Yeah.
Yes, but they never, but is that what goes in? No, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be oversized, and we get short cycling still. Even though it's on outdoor reset, it's still an outdoor, it's assuming everything, so it's not bad. It's still great, and there's still energy savings, but indoor load compensation is going to get you something a little bit better. So at that point, with your outdoor reset, you are going to wire in an outdoor temperature sensor as well as the boiler supply temperature sensor too. All right, so you will have to get the card itself is going to come with one temperature sensor. You'll have to add the outdoor sensor. The next terminal that you see here is the output terminal, the 0 to 10 or 4 to 20 output. So there are some boiler manufacturers now that have a 0 to 10 input. All right, and what that is going to do is that we can tell the boiler what firing rate to go to. So if it has that 0 to 10 input, because right now you've got a boiler, you're going to hook up their end switch terminals. All right, so the boiler end switch on the other part of the controller is, all right, call for heat, goes to 100%, and then modulates down. This here is going to know what zones are running, all right, what's the water temperature, and what do I fire to. So instead of going to high fire and coming down, it's going to go and learn what it needs to fire to based upon what's happening. All right, and so you have that option of 0 to 10 or 4 to 20. Now, Also, what we have built in here is that if you had a system that was looking for 4 to 20, you do not have to put the resistors on. All right, so it'll recognize either way and send the proper control signal back and forth. Like I said, all right, you already got your boiler sensor. There's my outdoor temperature sensor. And if your boiler doesn't have that capabilities of 0 to 10, we will also have the capabilities of that 0 to 10 output to, say, go to a 0 to 10 signal circulator or a mixing valve or a control valve that has a 0 to 10 signal. All right, so we can modulate that if we're not doing anything off the boiler itself. So we do have a lot of flexibility with this add-on card that you get into the system itself. All right, so that was a lot of things I was talking about that is available through the app. So I got to show you the app now. And the name of the app is called the Takeo Control. If you go into your App Store or Google Play Store, you're going to go type up Takeo and you're going to get everything by tacos. All right. And, or you're probably going to get Uber Eats to download or something like that. So look for Takeo Control. It is a separate app. All right. And it is a Bluetooth functionality that we have with the system. It's not Wi-Fi. You don't need Wi-Fi. And here's the other thing. You saw the first screen where I said same thing, only better. Yes, we have an app for this. Do you need the app? You do not need the app. You don't have to connect to this. If you want to wire it the way you've had it before and you want to do the exact same thing, go for it all day long. All right. We have some extra flexibility with the control by logging in with the app, but you by no means have to use the app. Okay. So, but what do we get out of the app itself? Well, the first thing that you see here is that we have over-the-air updates, which means we can always update the firmware as technology changes, as we do other things that we want to add to this thing. So therefore, instead of every 10 years or a few years coming out with a new control, we can come up with new software. Some of the simple things here, you can see we can name the zones. All right. We can like I said, we can name outputs. We can change the post purge. We can actually change the settings in the smart plug. All right. Right now, the smart plug by itself has 5 on, 10 off. We can change it down to 1 on and 60 off. All right. So your choice. You can have some flexibility there. All right. And we also can get some diagnostics out of it when you log in. All right. What can we change? Well, we can change the end switch of the boiler. All right, we can change the priority end switch. We can change the auxiliaries, all right, on what tells them to turn on rather than using the default settings. And like I said before, also through the app, we're going to change settings in the indoor reset or the outdoor reset, one or the other. You're not doing both in the same system. You pick one versus the other. All right, so for example, here's a couple of screens, all right, and I'll zoom in so you can see what's going on here. So this is, you're logged in, you're talking to the controller, and you'll see the SR504 on here. All right, and as we zoom in a little bit, you'll see I can click on zone status. Right at the top, you'll see flash LED. Let's say you had more than one control in the boiler room in front of you, and you're not sure, and they're all the same. You had 3 504s in the system. Well, which one are you talking to? Because they all have, they all look the same. Well, if you click on that radio button right there, flash LED, you're going to flash the green power light on the control. So now you know whether it's the left one or the right one or the center one, right? Now, you'll see the term there where it says connected controllers, and right underneath it, it says no connected controllers. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I'm connected to this controller. That is if you had something connected to the expansion terminal, you would see it listed there, whether it was an SR panel, ZVC, and I got a screenshot of that coming up here. Then you'll see zone status, device settings, device notes and help, device info, installer, import, export, and device disconnect. So your device settings is now, or your zone status, if you were to click on that, you'll see what zones are on, okay? Your device settings is going to be some of the settings that we can change and customize in the system. Installer setting has some of the same features with a few more things built in. The import export, which means I can save my settings to my device. So if I program this control, I save it to here, I export it to my phone. If somebody goes in and logs into it, 6 months later, and now nothing's working, you can go back to the house and import your settings back to the control if somebody messed around with it, right? All right, so if I were to click on zone status, all right, here's your next tab. You can see you can name the zones. Right now, they're just all named zone 1, zone 2. Zone 1 could be your indirect. But here's the one thing I love about the SR panel here. All right, for those of you that have done some wiring and then you want to confirm that it's working, you have to run up and down the stairs to turn the thermostat on to make sure that you've got your pumps wired in properly. If you hit force on, the pump is going to run. So you can see it kick in right away. So that's what those the force ons are. There is also an option in the control to force all zones on when you go under installer settings. Okay, so but if I were to click on the name, then you can see here, I can type in the name, hit OK. All right, now let's say we want to gain some efficiency out of this system. Let's, for example, you've got a 4-zone system in your house like this one here. All right, and we have a little tiny microzone. All right, for example, like in my house, I've got the guest bathroom and a hallway and the laundry room is all one zone, but it's completely interior. Almost no actually, no, there are no exterior walls. There's no exterior walls to that, so the heat loss is very, very small. But I don't want the boiler to fire when that is the only zone that calls for heat. Let's say I like it, all the zones are off in the house itself, that thermostat clicks on. Now, what's going to happen is that I can get the zone is going to turn on, the circulator is going to run and do what it needs to do. But let's not turn the boiler on. Let's wait for another zone to turn on before I get any heat out there. So this way I'm adding that zone sequencing into the system itself. So what you do is you click on that View Outputs tab right there. All right, click on View Outputs at the bottom. The next screen that pops up is going to show you your main boiler end switch. I also see priority boiler end switch, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2. I tap on auxiliary boiler end switch. Whoops. Sorry. And the next screen that pops up is going to be, you'll see default, which is highlighted, which means that main boiler end switch contact closure will be on any zone call. Zone 1 through 4, if I get that contact closure on that thermostat, my boiler fires. So I'm going to uncheck the default, turn on zone 1, zone 2, and zone 4. At the bottom, click save. And now what happens is that the boiler does not fire on a zone 3 only call. All right, so you might be looking at a system, like a 4-zone system like this, and you start getting on the edge of micro zoning where you might need to add a buffer tank into the system, because I'd rather have the boiler charge the buffer tank and I draw off the buffer tank, because when's a boiler most efficient? When it's off. Right, so I want to see long on times, I want to see long off times. So if I've got a boiler that's charging a buffer tank, great. And then my zones draw off of that buffer tank, even the little tiny zones. Now, this is a 3-zone house. It may not, you do the calculations, and we've shown you in a few Taco Tuesdays in the past on how to size a buffer tank. And all of a sudden it says, well, you need like a 2.5 gallon. Right, and you can't find a 2.5 gallon buffer tank, right? So, I can't get a 2.5 gallon buffer tank. Put a bigger one in. Doesn't matter, right? Longer run times. We want to see long on times. We want to see long off times. But this gives you the option of not having to add that buffer tank into a system here. So, got a lot of flexibility here with this system. Make sense? How we doing? All good out there?
All good out here.
I was hoping there were more questions so I could take another swig of water, but that was quick. Anyway, all right, what else can we do? All right, so like I was talking about before, if you had something connected through the expansion port, you can see right here, this SR 506 is actually connected to a 406 control. And this becomes a live active. So I am Bluetooth into the 506. And if I were to click here on the screen itself, it will bring you to the 406, and you can see down here connected to the 506 back and forth. All right, so you're connected to one, but communicating to the second one through the wires that you have in between. All right, so that's what that connected controller means. So now you can see how everybody is communicating to each other back and forth. You'll see There's less settings here on the 406 because you have all that information. Like you don't have your import export settings on here and disconnect because you're connected through the 506 via Bluetooth, if that makes sense. All right, so a lot of things have been built into the app to, one, make it easy, but again, two, remember, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. You can do a lot of your settings through the dip switches and the wiring that you've done on the board. But this gives us the flexibility of getting as many BTUs as possible from escaping your system.
A question came up, Dave. How often do we have to update the firmware? My answer on that one is technically never. It's working. Technically never. It's if a new functionality that you wish to use is offered, then you might want to. But if that would only be, I think, for new installations, and you want the latest firmware. Make sure you have the latest firmware before you install it. Once it's installed and it's doing what you're doing, I don't think you'd ever have to update the firmware.
I would say not, correct, yeah, unless we came out with a feature that you wanted to see, right, to use on an older project. Now, I would say today it's going to vary. You get a controller from your wholesaler, and we do have an updated firmware that on controls that we're sending today, but if it's been there for a couple of months, you might have the older firmware. And as soon as you start up the app, all right, it is going to say, oh, we want you to do an update, okay? So it is going to recognize and look for that firmware update. If you wanted to do the firmware update yourself, that would be under device settings, and you'll see a tab there for firmware update. But I would say today, if you've got a controller, there's probably a good chance as soon as you open the app, it says, give me do an update on the firmware, and you can't do anything else but that. Doesn't mean that we've had other versions that were bad. It was just that we added another feature to it. When you are doing an update, all right, this is important. If you're doing a firmware update, yes, your phone does need to be connected to the cloud. You got to have some internet capabilities, whether it's going to be through your cell service or through the Wi-Fi of the building. I know there's not much Wi-Fi in a basement. All right, I think a lot of basements are shielded with lead to keep the Wi-Fi out of the basement spaces. Right, so it's very challenging to get there. But since you're Bluetooth here, we have a 30-foot range, meaning 30-foot. I can see it. I'll still be able to communicate with my phone. And if you don't have cell signal downstairs, well, if you know which wall it is mounted on, go outside and stand next to that wall and get your cell tower, all right, to communicate to it. Number two, all right, I have found this works best every single time, all right. If your phone blacks out like mine does quickly, because I need to save the battery as long as possible without charging, don't let the screen blank out. All right, change that setting so this way you can do the firmware update without it blanking out, because when it blanks out, it kind of puts a kink into the download. It's not going to keep doing it anymore because your phone basically turned off, right? When you blank out, it goes into low power mode. So you need to make sure your screen stays on, and I think that's normal for a lot of things other than the app that are actually on here. It's not an app that you're downloading. It's the firmware that's communicating right to the controller itself. So you're doing this, and if this blanks out, it says, all right, we're not going here anymore. Okay, so just make sure you leave the screen active when you are doing a firmware update. So that's been one of the biggest complaints I've had out there, that the firmware isn't taking. All right, I know it's because the device is blanking out. So just change that setting real fast.
Got a question here from Paul Leonard for you. Can a dash 4 control work on with a dash 5 control? I'm guessing that's what you're asking, Paul. It's worded a little differently, but I'm inferring a few things. If I have a dash 4 control and a dash 5 control, can they talk?
All right, from the dash 4s and the dash 5, there's a yes and no answer to that. So we will show you how to wire it in our new wiring guide, which is coming up in a couple. All right, so no, we don't have the Bluetooth built into it, but we can make the two controls work, yes. So if you've got an older project out there that had two dash 4s and somebody let the smoke out of an older dash 4, yes, you can put a dash 5 in there, and we show you how to make that work. All right, for example, let's take a look at some of the settings and the programming that you have with say, the PC800 now. So here's an example of one of the wiring, a page out of the wiring diagram. and it's showing us with the PC800 added to the middle of the board. And we're going to do indoor reset, which means we only have the boiler temperature supply sensor wired in, whether it's a ModCon boiler or cast iron boiler here. But right now, this one is looking at a cast iron boiler that you have in there. You've got your aquostat on zone 1. Your DHW is going to be your indirect tank is zone 1. And then we have 6 zones wired into that. All right, so settings. All right, so when you have the PC, one of the things about the controller too and the app is that you have to try. Actually, no, you can't even try to program it incorrectly, because if you didn't have the PC800, you wouldn't have access to the app on that section. So you have to have the components in there. If you don't have the component, you can't screw it up. All right, so and I was about to say the words, well, we're trying to make it idiot-proof, but there's a lot of idiots out there. The idiots are the ones that are not on our webinar right now, right? They don't learn on stuff and don't read the instructions, right? So I'm sure there's ways to do it, but you can't really. It's hard to do it through the app itself. So, for example, here's just a handful of settings on the indoor reset capabilities. So it's going to ask you your boiler type. All right, is it an on-off cast iron boiler? Is it a modulating boiler that has a 0 to 10 input? And this is information that you'll have to find from the boiler manufacturer itself. Like, what is their minimum modulation rate? What is the response time? And now your boiler minimum temperature is what is based upon your heat emitters that you have to the house. So how low can you go, type of thing. What is your low differential? What is your high differential? And also, what is your boiler maximum temperature? So these are some of the settings. And we make it radio buttons. So, for example, when you look at your boiler itself, is it on off, or is it modulating 0 to 10 or 4 to 20? All right, and so we make it simple as a slider bar or the radio button. And if your slider bar, you can't get it exactly to land what you want it to, you do have the plus and minus buttons to get you exactly to the temperature. All right, so you go through those different settings, make it match to your design, make it match to your house itself. And move along. If we take a look at it and say, all right, well, we're doing outdoor reset now. All right, let's take a look at the PC800 tied into, say, a ModCon boiler. All right, and we have our 3 circulators tied in down here. Same set, a lot of the same settings. All right, and we give you some descriptions on what's going on. So what is the response time? Meaning, what type of boiler do you have connected here? Does it respond fast to changes or not? Okay, what is the boiler differential? Again, like I showed you before, we've got slider bars and the plus minus buttons to get the temperatures that you're looking for in the system itself. All right, now what this does do or does not do, I'm sorry here, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, let me come back a second so I don't forget what I was going to say. The reset ratio. All right, so in the PC700, one of the things that we did was we had you tell us what your outside design was, what your water temperature maximum and minimum is, and a bunch of calculations that went into it. You will have to do a quick calculation to figure out what your reset ratio is. All right, we do show you in the instructions, which takes into outdoor settings, your supply water temperature settings, and it's going to be a factor. All right, and you'll end up typing that number in, or slider bar, I'm sorry. We'll have a slider bar between 1.0 and all the way up to, I believe, 3.5 or something like that. So, which is your temperature change based upon outside air temperature. So, so you do have to do that calculation. We show you how to do that in there. And again, some of the same settings as we had before with settings, the minimum and maximum modulations of the boiler. All right, so questions about making this work into the Dash 4s and Dash 5s. All right, we have a brand new wiring guide. It is on our website. All right, so you can take a look. It is a 91-page manual. Everything you wanted to know about wiring the Dash 5s, connected to a Dash 4, as well as connecting to a Dash 2, even the metal box covers out there. So if you've got a 20-year-old system that had multiple controls and you got to get a Dash 5 in there, so that new Takeo wiring guide, yes, I've got one right here, and all the guys in the room are sitting here looking at it saying, I need to get this, Dave, and no, and the only way you can get this is by your firstborn or your left limb. So, no, they should be should be able to get them maybe in the office. You never know right now. So this new wiring guide is going to give you everything that you ever wanted to know about your systems itself. Now, what it does do, it also gives you a piping diagram to match up to your wiring, and it will also give you a legend. All right, and this legend is important to pay attention to. So, for example, it says here you've got 16 zones on this system. 15 of them are heating zones. One of those is indirect. But the important part I want you to pay attention to is all the way down at the bottom. It says special functions enabled, and if it says no, if you pipe it like this and wire it like this, you do not need the app to make this work. If this is your system, this is your wiring, you don't need to open the app to make this work. This is an out-of-the-box operation. You flick your dip switches. We even show you the dip switches on the settings. So as I zoom in here, you'll see the dip switches are all set up properly. You'll see the expansion wires and the power wires, all right, on how to make this all work properly. And like I said, it also goes into your wiring diagram as well. I'm sorry, piping diagram. So this is just one extreme example, but I wanted to show as a lot of things as possible that you have on here on tying in 3 panels together. So we've tried to think of everything possible and dropping it into this book as well, and a lot of the wiring that you'll run into out there. And that's all I got. And wow, I ended almost 4 minutes early, John.
I'm kind of astounded. That's pretty good work. We do have some questions though that will take up those last few minutes. And folks, again, if you this is a good time for you to put in any other additional questions that you might have. Ken Poffenroth, I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry. There we go. Can the add-on power controls like the PC800 be added in both the new -5 controls, the ZVC and SR? So the PC800 absolutely can be added to either the ZVC or the SR. If you're asking about can the PC700 or the 702 or 705 be added, the older ones with the Molex connector, that's a different question. And for that, we'd say no, there's no connection for it. The 800 can pretty much do what you need to do there.
Okay, so yes, so let me also interpret that question in another way as well. If you have an application that has an existing PC800, 700, the old 700 on there, and the bottom controller let the smoke out, and you need to put in a new controller, today, no, soon, yes. All right, and what I mean by that is also in the wiring diagram. So if you were to take a look at page 75, and I'll zoom it up on the camera itself, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, we will have a Molex plug adapter that will be able to tie in a PC 700, 702, 705 into a standard board. All right, we don't have a plug for it. Now, there is a plug. Let me go back. Let me see if I can show it. You guys don't see it here. Okay. If I had a picture of it, let me go back a few slides. So I got to go back a lot of slides. We actually get to product detail. All right. So if you were to take a look here, you will see this 4-wire terminal plug. All right. That is meant for the transformer. It looks like the PC 700, 702, 705 can plug in there. Don't do that. You'll let the smoke out of both. Okay. It is not in the same spot as the other one was. All right. So do not plug it in there. That is only meant for your transformer. But yes, you can. Like I said, if you take a look at my camera there, you can use. We will have this component out shortly, where you can tie in that plug onto a board itself. And then by doing that, you have to go into the app no matter what. All right. So even though you have the PC 700 that has its own settings, you will have to go into the app and change some settings in there. Excellent.
All right. Very good. Couple of questions about the wiring guide that is available online on our website. If you go to the new -5 control page, you'll be able to download that wiring guide. Is there a warm weather shutdown setting for the outdoor reset?
I'm about 95% sure of it. I don't remember off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, and that would be a bit done through the app, of course.
That is through the app, correct? Yep.
Yeah, it's through the app.
I'm wondering, do I have that on my phone? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And there's also a question about can you calculate system flow from the boiler delta P or delta T? If you know the BTU load and you know the delta and you have the delta T readings, in theory you can calculate system flow. It's it's just a refiguration of GPM equals BTUH divided by delta T times 500. So you fill in what you know, you should be able to figure out system flow as best you can. You need a good way to figure out what the BTU load is at any given point in time. That's the hard part, because that changes with the weather, right? If you know the delta P that the circulator is creating, then you can go back, if you know what that pressure differential is, you may be able to go back and look at where that, convert that to feet ahead, and figure out the flow rate based on your pump performance curve. The app doesn't do either of those for you. That's, I guess,
correct.
It's got to be done manually. But
yeah. All we're doing is sending the signal out to a pump and telling it to run. Right.
Right. You could do it. We're not. We don't have that built into the app.
Right. Yep. Excellent. And everybody, even though we are nearing the end of class, or we already ran overboard already, but if you have any questions, keep on typing in. We'll stay online as long as you want. And I do want to point out one quick thing. Next class is going to be, where am I? There we go. May 6th. The commercial guys are coming back. And Rich, Brett, and Tony are going to be doing net positive suction head. What is that? So that is next Tuesday's class. Actually, I don't think Tony will be there, but Rich and Brett will be there. I know Tony's going to be a little busy next Tuesday at the factory itself. But Rich and Brett should be doing that class.
One thing you'll enjoy about that class is understanding what causes cavitation, and you'll also learn that a lot of times people will say, "Oh, this little residential circulator, it's cavitating." In residential applications, cavitation is damn near impossible, because it's just that everything is so small. You're going to see that in base mounted, FI pumps and things like that. In commercial systems, rarely will I'd be shocked to come up with a scenario where you would see that with a 007 where it's actually truly cavitating. It's kind of hard to, but that program, even if you're not do commercial work, understanding that positive suction head is going to be very, very helpful to you in your business.
Yep, definitely.
And real quick, we had one on. I just wanted to get Gary Jensen's question. He did ask if the new boards were compatible with the older boards. We did discuss that, and the answer is yes, they are. You just have to make sure you use the wiring guide to make sure they're wired up and connected properly.
That's correct. Yep, the wiring diagram does go through those details. I don't remember what page it was off the top of my head in here. But it's in there in several instances where you see the -4s and the -2s. So for example, here we go. I found a -5 and a -4 connected together. All right, so we have lots of those wiring. We may not have put the piping together for you on that example, but close enough.
Technically, that would make it a -9. Sorry, it's a math joke. I apologize.
Okay, I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, all right, and everybody, yeah. So everybody here in the room just saw my face go blank, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they had, because they can't hear you. So,
right. Yeah. There we go. Are the transformers protected by a fuse?
Are the transformers protected by a fuse? No, the circuit boards are protected by the fuse.
Boards, right. Circuit boards are protected by the fuse.
Yep. Excellent.
Yep. And really, there's at that point, if the protection's all kind of built in there.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And if so, with that being said as well, you do have 2 fuses built into the cover.
There you go.
So there will be 2 fuses built in for you. So for example, like this is a ZVC board, so I have a 1 amp and a 6 amp. All right, and here 1 amp is for the board, the 6 amp is for the relays. Beautiful.
All right.
Feeling good?
Yep. George wanted to know why it's getting harder to golf. Is it an aging thing? Yeah. But
Well, we got to
that is,
work too much. Yeah.
I know that's the problem.
Yeah, this
That is
work
the
thing
problem.
gets in the way of golf sometimes. Yes.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. All righty, folks. I think that's it with the questions. So we do appreciate the gift of your time again today, as always. Dave, fantastic job as always.
23 hours
Great
time,
job,
you
Dave.
will get a link to the recording to this presentation, so you get to watch it again if you like to, and you'll also get your certificate of attendance and get your PDH if you were looking for that. That will show up in the emails in 23 hours time.
And don't
So
forget, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., part 3 of Takeo After Dark. We're going to be talking about air pipe sizing, finding flow, air elimination, expansion tanks, and this magical, mystical thing called pumping away. What the hell is it really?
yeah,
Do we
man.
understand it? So that's going to be on Takeo After Dark tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to Takeo's website to the training tab, and you can register for that class if you have not already. We'd love to see you there. But we are going to pull the curtain back on pumping away because
That's
these
it.
questions still come up regularly online, and
Mhm.
it's always fun to watch it unfold.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of Takeoff Tuesday. Jason, anything to add there? I thought I heard you talking in the back there. You were
No, I was just saying excellent job, Dave. Every time I go through this with you, I learn something. So I appreciate it. I appreciate it much.
My pleasure, everybody. Thanks again for coming. John, Jason, see you guys soon.
See you tomorrow night.
Rock and
See you
roll,
guys.
people.
Yes, see you tomorrow night.
Bye.
Enjoy.